A Trump versus Biden rematch is increasingly becoming likely. In fact, it's virtually certain as of this moment. Former American President Donald Trump won big in the Republican presidential nominations by winning the primaries at New Hampshire, and this was his second victory. He's already won the primary in Iowa. In New Hampshire, Trump had gone up against the former UN ambassador and presidential hopeful Nikki Haley. Trump won, but the Indian-American Nikki Haley, who was America's ambassador to the UN under Trump, said the race is far from over. In other words, she's not leaving the race just yet, much to Trump's disappointment. In Iowa, Haley had finished third. In New Hampshire, she suffered a double-digit loss to Trump. But Haley does have big hopes from the next primary because it is in South Carolina, her home state, a state that she was once the governor of. Polls show that she's trailing Trump in South Carolina as well. So if you look at it, the road to the Republican nomination is all but clear for Trump. If Nikki Haley loses in South Carolina, it's quite possible, if not probable, that she may actually just call it a day, which means Trump becomes the nominee. Remember, other candidates have already pulled out. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who was considered Trump's biggest competitor, has already dropped out of the presidential bid, as in fact did Vivek Ramaswamy. Not just that, DeSantis has actually endorsed Trump. So that's why Trump seems very clear, as do most people, that the presidential nomination race for the Republican Party candidate is all but over.
You know, we won New Hampshire 3 times now, three. We win it every time. We win the primary, we win the generals, we've won it, and it's a very, very special place to me. It's very important.
So the big question for us, what is going to happen next? Let's remember the one big elephant in the room. Trump is facing 91 criminal charges. They range from seeking to overturn the 2020 presidential elections to giving hush money payment to a porn star. Well, legally, a convict cannot be barred from contesting in an American election. But what you do have is at least 2 states who disqualified Trump from the primaries. I'm talking about Maine and I'm talking about Colorado. In a first, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the US Constitution was cited by a Colorado court to ban Trump. What does this section say? It says, if any person who was previously elected to office has taken part in an insurrection or a rebellion, he or she cannot hold office again. Now that's a hiccup for Trump. While it's just those 2 states, it's a hiccup. If it becomes wider than that, it could become a serious problem. So that brings us to the key question. And it's a question we're going to be discussing and debating at great length for the rest of this year. What happens in a Donald Trump versus Joe Biden rematch? Biden, by the way, has made one thing very clear last year. He said he is contesting only because Donald Trump is. He does not so much want to win the election as he wants to defeat Trump. But the problem here is, and the interesting question here is, if that's what he really wants, then the polls don't favor Biden. Let me show you. The Economist YouGov poll asked participants to predict the outcome of a Trump versus Biden rematch. This irrespective of their personal preferences. 44% of the respondents said that Trump will win. 35% predicted a victory for Biden, 21% were unsure. In New Hampshire, Biden did not even appear on a ballot when it comes to the primary for the Democrat candidate. He won the primary in a write-in effort. So what if, seeing as Trump emerge as the Republican candidate, Democrats are forced to rethink their candidate? Well, for more on all of this, we're now being joined by Corinne Clark, who's a Republican strategist, the co-founder of freepressfail.com, and Nicole Brenner-Schmidt's also joining us, who's a strategist on the Democratic side. Corinne, if I can just start with you. Would it be fair to say it's now almost certain that it's going to be Donald Trump as the Republican presidential candidate come November?
It certainly looks that way. It would take a really big something for that to not be the case. I think the only one who is clinging to the hope that it won't be Donald Trump is Nikki Haley, and I don't see her lasting much longer.
You're essentially saying that Nikki Haley is still clinging to hope of some sort or the other, but if she doesn't win in South Carolina, then does that mean that that's that?
Well, it will be that no matter what, even if she stays in the race. I think the delegate count will be so much in the favor of Trump that she won't be able to win it at convention. I do think what she is trying to do is stay in the race as long as she can, gather as many delegates to try to make an argument to be in the Trump administration when he wins his election. So I think she knows she's not going to be president, but she's still trying to get whatever she can get out of this race.
Okay, before I shift to the Democrat side, Corinne, one more question to you. On the Republican side, what could be the other lightning strike scenario that could mean that Trump is not actually on the ticket? Let's say, for example, what if he's convicted? Let's say the legal cases go ahead, he's put on trial, he's convicted. Would he then continue to just fight on, contest from prison, or what would happen then?
I think the Trump campaign has been very clear that he will continue to run for president regardless of how these court cases work out. And I think that he has the support to do that. I think those cases are all falling apart before our eyes. I know the Georgia case this week has just taken such a turn. I think they'll have to drop that case entirely. So I don't see him actually being convicted. But if that was the case, I think he would only solidify the support who sees these cases as persecution of the American voter. And I think it'll only help him as is if that were to go forward.
All right, Nicole, let me just shift to the Democrat side. Is there any scenario under which you can see that Joe Biden is not the candidate from the Democratic side?
No, I don't see that happening. I don't think that Joe Biden would make that decision. I don't think that the Democratic Party would force him to do that either. This is an incumbent sitting president. They're going to continue to run this race. They're going to lean into the fact that while Trump is almost certainly capturing the nomination of the Republican Party, that independents continue to be frustrated. It's who went to Nikki Haley in New Hampshire, and they're going to work on solidifying their base and trying to convince independents and the same voters that in 2020 voted for Joe Biden to reelect him.
I hear you, but let's face it, we've seen many polls that are indicating that if there was to be an election tomorrow, especially in certain key swing battleground states, Trump could beat Biden. So if those polls continue and remain the way they are right now, is there any scenario in which Joe Biden himself says, no, I don't want to contest. All I wanted to do was to beat Trump, and if I can't do it, maybe somebody else should?
I mean, I think behind the scenes, there's some speculation about names, but there's no serious conversation or movement to it. It's much more looking beyond this cycle and seeing what is the Democratic future, what are we looking at in 2028, who's sort of up and coming within those realms. I don't think that it'll be a given that it moves to Kamala Harris if Joe Biden is to win again this fall. There's a lot of different people in the party that they're looking to, but all made it very clear they weren't going to make a real solid effort to mount anything other than Congressman Dean Phillips, who is fighting his fight right now for all that it's worth, I guess.
Grant, if I could just ask you, why is it that Donald Trump has such a hold on the Republican Party? Why is it that no one's being able to challenge him, no matter how strong a chance they might think they had? No one can challenge Trump.
Well, Trump is undeniably the most successful Republican nominee that we have ever had in history. He has just blown every other candidate out of the water. And I think it's because he approaches his campaign so different than we've seen a candidate approach from the Republican side since maybe Ronald Reagan. And that is that he doesn't adopt a media narrative. He doesn't really play by the rules. And he gives everyone the feeling that he is fighting for them. I certainly feel that way myself. And it connects with voters that the Republicans had lost for the last few decades because we had been represented by a lot of Washington, D.C. elites. And Trump offered an alternative kind of voice. He made our party bigger than it ever has been before. And there's no reason for us to run away from that success. And as we can see, it really scares DC, and they're doing everything they can do to try to get him out of the race. But that only heightens the support on the grassroots level all across the country.
All right. Thank you both so much for joining us. Battle lines clearly seem to be getting drawn. Let's see how it all plays out. We'll, of course, keep tracking this very closely in the months ahead.